Okay, perfect.
I'm here.
Right. Perfect. We're going to get going. We're going to start on the transition zones here. Yep, I'm going to run. Greg's coming in the room now, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Moffett to walk us through this.
Yeah, again, Ryan Moffett, Community and Economic Development Director. Our focus of the workshop this evening is really in relation to the historic West Des Moines Master Plan, the underlying PUD zoning, which we would need to do to codify the design guidelines that have already been approved. And specifically, we're going to have a pretty robust discussion on the transitional districts piece of this whole plan, which we'll go into more detail what that consists of and what the definition of that is here in just a few minutes. So we have a decent amount of information to run through. So if there's any way to maybe hold the questions till the end of the presentation, we do appreciate that. Just going to the next slide here. Really, there's three takeaways that we want to have for you tonight. So give these some thought as we go through this. Number one will just be an update on where we stand with the master plan update, where we stand with the PUD zoning. And I'll have Brad give a little bit of an overview here in just a minute. Next up will be the purpose and intent for why we propose the transitional zoning and why the subcommittee that reviewed the guidelines back in the day and was a part of the master planning efforts recommended in favor of this. And then we do have another item that we need council's direction on tonight, which is preference for some language in terms of how we enforce the design guidelines going forward too. So we'll dive into that a little bit further. So I am joined by Brad. He's worked extensively on this project over the years. He's lived this effort. He's got the institutional knowledge that I might not have throughout all the numerous public meetings that have been held on this process. And he's going to get us started with some background information on the plan and where we're at right now.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening. I'd like to start off first by just again reiterating what I'll be doing for you tonight is basically providing you with an update on our master plan and the PUD itself. So I want to kind of be clear is that what we tried to do with this master plan effort down in Valley Junction is to try to attack it a little bit differently. And the way that we decided to do that is kind of with puzzle pieces. And there's three main puzzle pieces to that is the actual master plan itself. So there's three companion documents. The first is the actual master plan document itself. We have that about 90% complete. I'll speak about that in more detail a little later. We have our design guidelines, which was approved by council back in 2022. And then we have our PUD or master plan itself, which we're about 60% completed with that. Again, what we try to do in this particular situation is to try to not have three separate documents that sit alone. For years, you've seen where a master plan will come through and it'll sit, and you'll have a PUD for something and it'll sit. And then you may have, again, you'll have some design guidelines and it'll sit. And so what we were trying to do is galvanize and put these puzzle pieces together from all the input that we had. And so that's the bigger master plan that we're talking about. First is the master plan document itself. It's a guiding document for the district for our vision and our implementation of the plan. It outlines our goals and action steps and also point out resources that's available. It works in conjunction with the overall city comprehensive plan, and it works again with existing city policies. As I mentioned, currently we're about 90% completed, and that 10% that we're estimating that's not completed is based off of some of the decisions that's going to be made as we're finalizing the PUD itself. Next is the design guidelines, the second document. The guidelines is a reference for the area's historic aesthetic, basically. It also is a tool for promoting the future growth of the area. The guidelines itself, like I said, it was completed in December of 2022. After about 20 hours of outreach, that would be in the sense of public / steering committee meetings. I will point out that we had about 420 workshop participants through that process, and we had about 478 participants in our visual preference survey. So that's how we got our guidelines, is by that outreach. The next and final document is the actual PUD itself. That PUD, what it does is it's intended to codify the goals and the priorities of the prior two documents that I spoke about. It's defines our permitted uses, which Ryan will talk about a little bit more specifically on when we get to the transitional areas, and also talks about our bulk area standards. Right now, it's a more of a collaborative effort between CED Development Services and our consultant that we hired. We're about 60% done with this, and we've had close to about 6 rounds of revisions going back and forth. Right now, I'll talk briefly about factors that are affecting the PUD's timeline. Our consultant had some personal circumstances that made his responses to some of our work a little slower than we expected. We've had some internal evolving review processes that we've been working through. We do have currently some new PUD formatting standards that have changed since before we started the process. And Ryan will talk about this a little bit in his part of the presentation, but we do have some differing interdepartmental expectations on the regulatory strength of the PUD itself and how we should move forward with that. Along with that, we have some overlapping priorities with time-sensitive projects being pulled off of working on the PUD to work on some larger projects, some urban renewal areas, and things of that nature. With that, I'll go ahead and I'll pass it over to Ryan, and I'll let him give you a little bit more of the background and framework of the transitional district itself. Thank you.
So I guess to go back and hit on again what a transitional district is in terms of how it's envisioned in this plan. Most downtowns, if you think of them, basically, it's not just a main street. Go to any small town in Iowa and you'll see off of the main street, typically there are kind of a downzoning of uses essentially as it fades into maybe more dense housing and then finally out to single family housing too. And so that was acknowledged in this district, quite honestly. And so throughout the course of the planning process, these are the areas that you see on the screen right now. That was kind of a compromised approach. At one point, this plan took both sides of 4th and 6th Street and put that in a transitional zone. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy behind doing that in areas that were pretty well established single family areas. And so this was what the steering committee landed on at the time in 2022. And if you notice, I mean, it does include a big chunk of 5th south of Vine. And then areas that are select off of 4th and 6th, where really you already have a mix of not only medium density, but also a mix of uses there as well. And we'll show some specifics on that when we get into the presentation. So, you know, I think the creation of this, it's intentional. I mean, a lot of this probably came as a result of the conflicts that you do see when you have transitional uses like this, when you've got commercial that adjoins a residential area, things like parking, things like buffering, screening, all those kind of things do come up in the process. So really the objectives that were identified at the time as to why they would create the transitional zones, number one is the buffering between more intense and less intense that I just mentioned. You know, I think it needs to be realized that this is an area that was built out prior to World War II. And in most cases, this area was built out prior to zoning even existing as a land use tool. And it's tough to apply the same standards that we would elsewhere in the community that have a more suburban development prototype when you've got smaller lots and a concentration of density that you've got in this area today. Another good point behind this is when we look at what transitional zones are, again, it allows you to expand housing density in areas further out from 5th Street. It would allow you to bring more neighborhood scale, lighter intensity commercial uses into these areas. And we'll cover what's allowed, what's not here in just a few minutes. But we hear often from the Historic Valley Junction Foundation that at any given time, there's pent up demand for more commercial users. There's a lack of space down there. So that's a good problem to have, all things considered. This does provide a little bit of a relief valve, basically, to allow some of those low intensity commercial uses that quite honestly would otherwise chew up a prime retail space on 5th Street. It allows them some breathing room to be able to expand in the nearby streets adjoining 5th. And then it diversifies housing options. So, you know, we talked a lot about in our 2040 plan, it's very heavy when it comes to these housing items. We talked a lot about missing middle housing allowances. And quite honestly, it's specifically stated in that 2040 plan itself that we should look to modify planning guidelines to allow a variety of housing types, designs, and accessibility. it's also referenced that we explore options to increase missing middle housing opportunities. And I think that this transition zone is one way on a micro scale within this one neighborhood in which we could go about doing that. So what you see on the screen, there's a famous author, Daniel Perozik, that's done missing middle housing. He's done books on it. He goes around the country and speaks on it. I think you all are familiar with the concept of it. I know we hit this on the 2040 plan pretty heavily, but basically what we're describing is anywhere between 3 units to 12 units, essentially, smaller apartment buildings, smaller multifamily townhomes, row homes, things of that nature that are beyond 1 and 2 story dwellings and the large apartment blocks. And so really, we pulled out of the book, 2 elements that I think are applicable to Valley Junction. This first one called Neighborhood Block A. You'll notice there is a mix of single family homes, smaller apartment buildings, things of that nature. So when we looked at that map of transitional zones, are all of those necessarily conducive for commercial? Maybe not, but this is a design type or a development typology that we maybe could expect to see in these areas. The second one is a condition that we've got. Again, when we talk about that conflict of having the higher intensity commercial uses here, it's identified as Main Street for us. Obviously, that's Fifth. When you come in behind it, you've got the smaller cottage homes. You've got maybe some of those businesses that are in those homes that have been conversions over the years as well. And, I think overall, when it comes to the success of Valley Junction, you all for years have done things that have caused that neighborhood to be very successful and a desirable place that people want to live in. And the foundation, about 2 years ago, they did a survey essentially, and tried to gauge from the poll respondents what they wanted to see happen in the neighborhood. And I think the feedback that I took away from some of the results specific to housing typologies is they said, we want new housing opportunities that aren't upper story apartments or, single family homes that were built maybe 100 plus years ago. So specific to what transitional zones are, again, this would have an allowance for small office spaces. So think of photography studios or a yoga or Pilates studio, hair salons, things of that nature. A lot of these, again, already exist, and we've got a picture here that in just a minute that will show a map of some of these kind of lighter intensity office or lower intensity neighborhood scale commercial uses that are already prevalent within the area. Quite honestly, it's how this neighborhood has been built out over the years, is to have this kind of organic mix of residential and commercial within it. So one of the things when we talk about the transitional districts, I think we've got some protections in there. If we did see new development in those someday, we've got the design guidelines in place that will bolster the appearance, the materiality, the quality of what gets built back there to make sure it is appropriate and more residential in character and scale. So a few specific examples. We're looking at the 500 block of 5th Street just south of Vine. You'll see a mix already of houses that have been converted to offices over the years. And then you had, in the case of Capital Financial Planning, that's the old corner grocery store that you'd found in neighborhoods like this. Obviously, it's been remodeled and has a more modern appearance, but that's actually connected to what was previously a house that's now being used as a photography studio. Just to the west of there, you did have a newer commercial building that was built. Today, that probably wouldn't be a building that from a form standpoint would meet the design guidelines that we have in place. It's pushed back, there's parking in front of it. Quality of the building and the materials are fine, but that's a little bit, before these design guidelines were approved. And then we go further south on 5th Street, and there's already this mix that's happening. Obviously, these are blocks that are much more in transition already in terms of redevelopment, but you'll see again, there's 2-story houses with a real estate office in it, red house remodeling. Again, this kind of cottage scale housing that was also providing homes that were converted to businesses at 1.2 that you see really, all over the place. There's, in Des Moines, Ingersoll and Grand, that corridor, the University corridor near Drake, you see those kind of things pop up there as well. So specifically from a use perspective, when we talk about uses that are allowed, live work units, we talked about the small commercial spaces, and then residential types. And where the subcommittee that worked on this landed is basically if you have a normal 50-foot wide residential lot, about 7,200 square feet is what the area of that lot area would be. There would be an allowance for up to 4 dwelling units per lot. So these just show some precedent imagery. You've got more of a historic row home appearance. You've got a more modern one there. These are the kinds of living options that the transitional zones could support if new development did happen. Doesn't say that it has to happen, but where there's interest in new development, that's a typology that you might see there. Low intensity commercial uses, boutique retail, bed and breakfast. These are things that could be allowed with a conditional use permit. There's the conversion again of the office. It used to be Mark Chris Holmes. I think there's an interior designer in there now on Fifth. And then restricted uses. So things that are auto dominant, drive-throughs, restaurants in general are too intensive of a use that the subcommittee felt to put in the transitional zone. So that would be something that would not be allowed. And then large scale multifamily buildings that would exceed that 4 dwelling units per lot. So I think one of the reasons why we're here right now, we've got some folks in the audience with WB Realty, and they've been patient, cool customers. Obviously, as you can tell from what Brad had talked about, this effort's taken longer than we probably ever envisioned that it would. They have assembled 3 properties on 4th Street that's immediately behind the Union 315 development that they completed several years ago. They've had a good track record in developing in Valley Junction so far. These are rental properties currently that really are at a crossroads right now. They do need some reinvestment if they're going to remain. But what this developer has talked about doing is actually a development not unlike some of the proposals that we've seen elsewhere in this presentation. And so what you see on the right there is kind of their conceptual project that they're wanting to do. This is a 12-unit cottage-style residential building. There are no commercial uses proposed with this. Those buildings you can see on the top picture there, that's kind of the view from 4th Street. Right in behind it, they actually are proposing a courtyard, which would be an amenity space for the residents that live there. And then behind that further would be the parking for the development as well. So this is a project that would meet the city's parking requirements. So it's not something where it's really pushing the burden off on the rest of the existing neighborhood. But I think the problem that they've got right now is they've come in and they've done their pre-application. They've met with us several times now on this development. And they're stuck. They can't really come in and rezone this. The zoning today doesn't allow for it. We basically asked them to wait until we get this PUD done. So that's kind of the dilemma that they're in right now. And I think they wanted us to bring this forward because if we're being honest, this was always going to be somewhat of a sticky decision. I understand we probably don't have unanimous consensus in terms of the notion of these transitional districts within the plan and the PUD. But what we're looking for tonight is really to get feedback from council on how we should proceed. So I will say that from a recommendation standpoint, staff is recommending that we uphold what the subcommittee had put together previously. And I think we've outlined the reasons why throughout the presentation tonight. But really, it just provides an opportunity for additional reinvestments. Again, a good problem to have in this area. People want to live down here. People want to be a part of this. They want to open their business here. It's that relief valve to allow more commercial space to happen. And really just give living options that don't exist today. And I think we've rounded the bend in Valley Junction to warrant and support some of this reinvestment that's proposed. So before we wrap up here, there is one other thing that, again, I need your feedback on that we're kind of stuck on right now. And I just want to see where council wants to go with this. So we're going to refer to this as in terms of the shall and the should language. And so this comes down to the enforcement of the design guidelines that have already been approved. Right now, we're in a position because they haven't been codified yet, where if a developer came in, we ask them to follow the guidelines. Where in the case where we've had development agreements, we've mandated within the development agreement that they meet these guidelines. But I know that Lynn and her department, it's been a little bit of a struggle in every circumstance with the project that might come in to ask them to meet something that's not yet codified. And so the challenge that we've got, when I hear the phrase design guidelines, to me, that is a recommended course of action. That maybe if there's good grounds for doing so and there's a reason that could be presented, there could actually be some deviation from the design guidelines as long as it's tastefully done. That's the should language piece of it. The shall language is guidelines were adopted. We want those followed to the letter of the law. There's no ability for waiver or deviation from those. So there's pluses and minuses to each option here, and I won't read these verbatim, but so this is the required piece of it where there's really no leeway. There's no ability for staff to deviate from it. There's no ability for council or plan and zoning commission to deviate from it, short of someone amending the PUD to cause a guideline to be modified. So that does present a level of rigidity that I think sometimes is tough for the development world. Let's be honest too, at the time that this was created, a lot of work went into it, but you can't always predict every circumstance on every site. In terms of nailing all the design guidelines, there's going to be things that come up. They're going to administratively kind of test the design guidelines a little bit. There's new building materials that are going to come out that we haven't even contemplated yet that still could be of high quality. So that's, one of the downfalls of doing this one size fits all approach. And I think if a developer did come in, let's say they proposed a high quality project that we would otherwise support, but they need that waiver, they're back to amending the PUD and the process that involves as well. The upside to this, though, is it's pretty clear. It's pretty black and white. It again puts Lynn's staff in a position to where what you see is what you get. You shall meet it. There's no strain from that. The should language, there again, pluses and minuses to this one too. I talked about the flexibility that I think that, sometimes projects might want to have, but the challenge is that this is more subject to political influence over the years, depending on, council seat and their vote of things. There's more ambiguity to this decision. And then, if council maybe made a decision at some point in time to deviate from the guidelines, that can move away from the spirit of what was originally adopted when there was a lot of public meetings and outreach on this. So that, I think, is it. I'm not making a recommendation on this. I just wanted to, these are the two options we've got in front of us and just get council's take on which way we should proceed. And Brad, is there anything I missed that you think they should know?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, just to start out, like where on this map that you've got there, where is Mr. Wiederstein's project? You point to that? Right there?
Yep.
Okay, so what needs to be done for him to be able to proceed at this point in time?
Well, and I might call Lynn up too to talk about the existing requirements here, but my understanding is I don't think they can do their own freestanding PUD today. That hasn't been a desired outcome that we want to see happen.
No.
Knowing that this PUD is in process. And so.
And that's kind of why this is here, is that this has now kind of forced us to get back to this and say, what do we want this to be? What are you going to be able to do in these transition zones? We need to solidify this so that we don't have, because we can't do a spot zoning, obviously, and allow for a one-off project, and we wouldn't want to do that. But you've got a project right now. My understanding is that the homes that he owns, he's continually putting some TLC into them, patching this, patching that, but they're starting to really come up with some issues there. And this project, frankly, that I've seen that you put up here today looks beautiful. But he really can't proceed at this point in time. So you got kind of an immediate thing, and then you've got a long-term situation. So I guess that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
What can we do long-term in these? And it's, I guess I don't remember these transition zones being so disjointed like this, but they're pretty disjointed. So what can be done in each one of these things? I mean, is it all the same thing in each one of them? Or is it, in one of them you can have kind of the different housing options, but in here you can have some different business options? Or
Well, right now it would be the same uses allowed. We didn't
same use as each one of them?
Correct. Yeah, we didn't
Okay.
pick, say this one's only residential, this one's only commercial, and vice versa.
Okay, can
So-
you go back to the slides that show what's allowed in these? And it's allowed, but we have not codified anything. We have not put anything.
That's correct. The PUD would codify both the design guidelines and then a whole host of bulk regulations that everything from setbacks, heights of buildings, open space requirements. We're really not prepared to talk about that with you. If I'm being honest, our thought would be that once we wrapped up all the back and forth and all the iterations of the PUD document, then we would have this conversation. But I think it's helpful to have now because quite honestly, we knew it was going to be probably the most, challenging one to work through.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we don't want is we don't want to put something in place that encourages people to buy single family homes, tear them down and put something new in their place, right? Like we want to encourage rehabilitation of existing single family homes if at all possible. But what we're seeing in this case is single family homes that can't be rehabilitated. So in that event, what can go there?
Is it that they can't or they don't want to and they want to put up the row house? I mean, there's two different.
And that's probably a question best left for the developer, but I think that this is their preference and probably why they purchased the property to begin with was to do a medium density housing project there at some point.
But they're going to have to tie all three of those lots together, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So it will be one big lot.
One big lot. And I think our application of this is when we talked about 4 dwelling units per lot, that was basically per, 50-foot wide, 7,200 square foot lot. So when you combine all this here, they would max out the density that they would allow under that formula with the 12 units.
So there's nothing stopping anybody else from coming in and doing just what you said, Russ, buying an entire block and putting up row houses.
Within the transition zones and
Right.
in theory, yeah, I mean, someone could do that.
Ryan, why wouldn't we want to just, because the mayor said there's the immediate concern for what we're looking at right now. Well, the project on 4th Street, but then there's the long term and all of these transition zones. Why do we have to decide together? Why couldn't we just look at the immediate and then take a little more time to focus on the other transition zones, on what that would look like?
I don't know Lynn, if you could maybe step up to answer that one for me, that would be helpful.
Because it appears as though we do have something in front of us right now. And perhaps the fact that the work is not entirely done is holding it back. And if that is the case, then Mr. Mayor, you said you don't want a one-off, but if there's an immediate, I don't want to say need, but anyway.
I totally hear what you're saying.
But
I don't want a one-off. I don't think we can do a one-off legally either.
To do this project, you would have to put it into a PUD. There's no way to do the project with multifamily based under current zoning regulations. One, I can't even get to a 12 density. The 3 lots combined is about a half an acre. Even if I zone it to high density, you can get to the 9 units. My setbacks are not conducive to the size of lots. You're basically going to kill off a lot of what you can do just by trying to meet setbacks. So a PUD is meant for creative projects that you can't do under straight code. That's what would have to happen here for it to move forward. The goal is to obviously put the PUD for the whole area in place, and this would just dovetail with it. So to move it forward, we are creating a PUD specifically for this one.
Oh, sure.
Ideally, the regulations we put in that PUD will be one and the same for all of the transition districts. So essentially it gets absorbed in the long run, or it gets repealed and just absorbed. But it would take some time and effort just to put the PUD to play.
But to apply what belongs or what is maybe proposed in this one spot, to apply that to every transitional zone, that would not meet the spirit of what the mayor and Kevin were just talking about there. And that's why I said we could change the PUD for just this one and then really work on what we want for the others. What's the downside to doing that? I understand that the PUD for this has to be created to allow for this. But if what we see here is not necessarily desirable in those other spots, why would we want to apply what's here to those other spots?
Well, you would have to do an analysis of all the other spots and determine, are those homes in a position that they're kind of beyond repair? They're just more money's being dumped in than what's going to come out. And that's really not our call. That is kind of more the private side's call.
Sure.
Granted, there's always an incentive for them. If I can tear it down and put up 4 units, my income maybe is better than if I tear it down and rebuild a single family home. We typically have not been the one to say whether or not a building should be torn down, other than if it truly has very obvious structural issues. We ran into that with 111 Fifth. There was people on both sides of that one, whether or not it should be torn down or whether it should try to be rehabbed. And, staff gets caught in the middle of those because it's kind of not our call to say how much money somebody should drop into that property.
But I want to point out that there's a house currently I want to say it's 525th, but I won't swear to that. I know it's on the west side. That was a single family. The gentleman bought it. And he has gone in and totally rehabbed this structure as it was. And he's going to make it a real estate office. So most people would have said there's more money going to be spent in trying to fix what's bad on this place. But it didn't mean that it had to come down. So he opted not to take it down and he's rehabbed it. So again, I don't know that any of us can sit here and say that these, 3 houses on 4th Street are beyond repair. Okay. Mr. Wiederstein bought these knowing that they were single family houses and was, I guess, betting on the come that this was going to happen. these transitional zones, and that's why he's waited. So I think it's the case that he's opting not to put money into them and letting them, basically, again, this is just my assumption is that he's doing the bare minimum that needs to be done to put some Band-Aids on these things until this happens. But I don't think it's a case that any of them are probably beyond repair. He's choosing not to do it and wants to put up these row houses. So I think
the situation that we're not looking at that oftentimes exists, and I think it's the case here, is the economics of it. So could you repair these homes? Sure. Could you tear the homes down and put up new single family homes? Sure. But the economics don't work.
I don't know how you can sit there and say that they don't work. Who's gone in to analyze them? I mean, there was a house at 35th and Fuller. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that house. Somebody bought it that lives to the west there, bulldozed the perfectly good house and just extended their yard. So you can do anything you want to a property, whether it's, the average person would say, why would you ever take a perfectly good house and bulldoze it and make it a yard? But this person did. In this case, the properties were bought hoping that this was going to come to fruition, and then make the appearance that they're beyond repair and they have to come down. And I don't buy it. Again, looking at that house on the 500 block of 5th Street, it can be done. He's choosing not to.
I guess let me, at this point in time, I know that we don't have any public input, but if we have questions, we can ask people in the audience, right? And I know that Ryan is here himself. If I could ask Mr. Wiederstein to come up and I guess just address this, what is the issue? How come you can't just repair these, rehab these and keep renting them out? Or why not just tear them down and rebuild new ones and sell them? I mean, what is the issue? If you could enlighten us on that.
So we bought those 3 houses. We bought them one at a time. It's not like we bought all 3 of them in the same month. I think it was over like 3 years. And we did that because we own 315 5th Street. We were protecting the back of it in case we needed some overflow parking or some other need was going to be required for 315. That's why we bought them, not to tear them down and build row homes. To be honest with you, this is a passion project. This is not a moneymaker by any means to build these row homes. There's very little profit in this deal. Those row homes, they work at the 12 units on those 3 lots. They don't even make sense. Even if you took 1 unit off, it doesn't even.
And when you're saying they work, Ryan, you're saying because the cost to be able to do this versus the rent that you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Barely cash flows.
Yeah. Let me just tell you a little bit about the houses. One of the houses, the basement's so bad in it that every time the city inspector comes in for a rental certificate is like, hey, next year you may not be able to rent this wall. It's like, it's going to fall in anytime. Like, I'm surprised we even still get rental certificates on. And I'm not going to go in and replace a foundation in a house that's 120 years old. It doesn't make any sense economically. The rest of the house is actually okay. It would be a good one if somebody had a vacant lot with a house that was in much worse condition where they could move that house somewhere else. Because outside of the foundation, that house is pretty good. The middle one is complete wreck. Actually, the foundation on it's good. The rest of the house is really bad. It needs everything from electrical, plumbing. It's all plastered walls. The roof leaks. We didn't go in and replace the roof. We just patch it. And then the third one, smaller house. I mean, right now the city doesn't even permit the garage to be used because it's a hazard. And that's how we bought it, was that way. It's not like we just let it dilapidate. That was, who was the gentleman that lived down there? They used to call him the mayor of Valley Junction. Whatever his name is. Anyway, that was his house. We bought that. And so we were like, okay, well, we've got 3 of these lots together. What makes sense? We looked at commercial low, residential high. What kind of mix can we go? And the 12-unit townhome concept or row home made the most sense for the use. It fit in the best with the neighborhood. It's on 4th Street. Businesses on 4th Street are not real attractive because there's no parking. So we thought that the row home concept was going to make the most sense for for that area.
Square footage of the row home.
Get your mouse.
Yeah, what square footage of each
Oh,
of them?
Dan Carlson here. How much, what's the square? About 1,000 square foot
Okay.
apiece.
Well,
And the houses that are there about that size,
mhm.
maybe a little less.
But Ryan, you're saying that if you were to, the amount of money you'd have to spend to rehabilitate these homes, to be able to continue renting them out, it just economically doesn't make any sense for not for you, not for anybody to be able to do this.
I mean.
That's speculation. I just,
Well, here, what's
I'm
what's
asking-
worth it to one person is not worth it to another necessarily.
Sure.
Hey, 20 years ago when I was rehabbing 50 houses a year, yeah, maybe I would come in here and buy one of these for 120 grand and throw 50 grand into it and sell it for 220. But that's not what these things are anymore. I bought them for 150. I was protecting an investment I had on Fifth Street. If I went in there, I'd probably spend at least that on these houses just to restore them. It wouldn't make any sense. I mean, I would be better off tearing them down than renovating them. But that's me. I'm not saying that's every single house renovator out there.
Mhm.
I mean, I renovated plenty of homes in my day that never generated $1, and that happens, but that's not what, you know.
Well, it's one thing if you're gonna buy it and live in it, and it's another thing if you're gonna
Right.
buy it as an investment property. I mean, you're not gonna buy it as an investment property, put all this money into it to break even or lose money.
the guy on Fifth Street did.
How do you know he's not losing money? I mean, just because they did it doesn't mean that it was a winner. I've done plenty of things and they're not winners. Just because he did it doesn't mean it's a win.
Just because you don't want to do this doesn't mean somebody else won't.
Yeah, exactly. That's
my point.
and that's fair. And
It
that's,
can be done.
well,
You're
sure it
choosing
can.
not to do it.
Yeah, well, I own the property.
I understand that.
I mean, and it's worth it to me to tear them down before I renovate them.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, if you have unlimited amounts of money and you want to rehab something, you probably can do that to some extent, assuming that the foundation isn't totally shot and whatnot. But at the same time, just there is an economic aspect of this entire thing. And you're not going to have somebody that isn't going to live in the home that's going to put a bunch of money in there just to lose money every single month. You're not going to do that. I mean,
It's
like you
too
said,
hard,
you'd be smarter just to tear it down and sell the lot for whatever you can get it, get for it. And you're probably going to lose money on that.
He also started off by saying that these row houses are a passion. It's not that he's making money on it. So you
It's
don't make
not
money or
like
you
I'm
don't
coming
make
in
money.
here making $1 million on this thing. It's 12 row homes. I mean, at the end of the day, if these houses weren't in such bad condition, I wouldn't consider tearing them down. Like I said, the one house could be relocated elsewhere and salvaged and can probably go in another lot in Valley Junction. The house on the next house up, I never even approached those people about buying it because that house is in really good shape and it could never be, there's no reason for it to ever be removed.
Mhm.
I don't think the fear here that somebody's going to come in here and buy a house and say, I want to put this in a transition district use. Because if there's houses down there that sell for 250 now that are in good shape, nobody, I don't care who it is, will ever justify buying a lot for 250,000 in Valley Junction and putting 3 townhomes on it. It just would never work economically. So we're in a unique position where we have 3 assembled lots right next to one another. And those 3 houses happen to be well below average in condition. Now, that's probably going to be very unusual that anybody has 3 below average homes in that neighborhood that they've assembled. So I don't know that you're going to see a lot of people coming out here. I mean, it's very easy to see one house that's very dilapidated right next to one that's been renovated. That same guy, that same person or that same investor is not going to buy the house that's been renovated for $250,000 and tear it down. It's just not going to happen.
So if these houses are in such bad shape, how does he have a rental certificate?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Maybe
I'm
we
a-
need to,
I'm a shock-
maybe we need to revoke it. I'm not sure
I'm
who's
as
here,
shocked as you
Lynn,
are.
but he's saying that they're not habitable. How does he have a rental certificate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm shocked every year that I get them.
With tomorrow, like, seriously, Lynn, we need to look at that. If he's telling me that these are in such bad shape.
The question is, how do we move forward? What do we do going forward? I guess
Mayor,
what
can
are the
I
next? Go ahead,
Ask some
Matt.
questions here.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not necessarily for Ryan, I don't think, and I appreciate appreciate him bringing this concept forward. You look at this concept anywhere else in the city, and if you don't know me, I'll tell you, I love seeing development happen, particularly a good development. At least the images I see on my screen, they look like a very good development. I was very careful about Valley Junction because of the look and the feel. And so I guess I got a series of questions I'd like to ask. Maybe it goes to Ryan Moffett. It may go to Lynn. I'm not sure. But the first question is, today, what is the density permitted on a lot? Is it 4 units per lot today in a single family area?
This is Lynn. On a single family, it's 1.
Okay. And so today in this specific
Let me
area.
clarify, Matt, let me clarify. There's a 1 dwelling unit. The acreage comes into play, but a single family lot is 1 dwelling unit.
And an ADU.
Yes, and an ADU now, or an
And an
SDU.
ADU. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I know in Valley Junction in this area, and I think maybe half a block away or so from here, there is a multifamily. I think there's a couple multifamily buildings. Are they're just a non-conforming use, or how do they operate in this general area?
I'm assuming you're talking the couple townhome developments that are down in Valley Junction.
They look a little bit more like apartments. I think it might just be 1 block either north or south of where we're talking about here, on the east side of 4th Street.
I think Lynn might be right. I think Lynn's talking about, I think it's townhomes, Matt, maybe, but they're like connected.
There is an apartment building down there at 4th and Elm, I
Yeah.
believe it is. It's across from the city lot.
Yeah,
I
there you
remember
go.
knocking on
Casey,
doors there. I remember knocking on doors there where it's.
And that apartment's
garage.
been there for
Yeah.
ever.
Right,
Sure.
yeah, some things will predate our
Okay.
codes. I know the city did a couple townhome projects, special projects down in Valley Junction. Those are farther to the west, I believe, but, so yes, there is little pockets of multifamily here and there, but most of them are old. They're-
Okay. Yeah, I think it's 229 4th Street, just south of Elm, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, here, maybe I'll ask it this way. Do we have anything in the Valley Junction area that has the density for which is being discussed today at 4 units per lot?
What we would have are actually the newer mixed-use buildings. There is really not a density cap when you're doing a mixed-use building. So most of our mixed-use buildings have a density that's higher than typically you would see. Anything that's medium density, it is capped at 6 dwelling units, 6 to 12 dwelling units. High density is 12 to 18. So 18 is the max density I have in a residentially zoned property of some fashion.
And do we have, so right now, I guess what I'm getting at is we have an established look and feel there, right? I don't, if it's 6 dwelling units, 4 dwelling units, 1 dwelling unit, is this an anomaly to go to 4 units per lot? Or is this consistent with other development in the Valley Junction area?
Councilmember McKinney, this is Ryan again. I don't know if we've done that research on like the newer townhomes that have been built, but Len is correct. What we have done is take a look at the mixed use buildings that are newer on 5th Street. And this would be a density less than those are. 5th Street might be an outlier compared to some of these residential streets, but we'd have to take a look at some of those townhomes that are scattered throughout the larger
Okay.
Valley Junction area. And see how
All
it
right, well
stacks
then
up.
maybe I'll just, no, I appreciate that. I guess where I'm getting at is, I want to be consistent with the area. I don't want to radically disrupt it one way or the other. So for me, I'm going to want to make sure that whatever's proposed in the transition zones is consistent with the look and feel that's there today. All right. So if we do allow up to 4 units per lot, then I think, okay, then maybe we don't have a problem here. But if we don't allow 4 units per lot elsewhere, I think that's going to change the area in a way that would be concerning. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is we talked about expanded commercial uses. I don't have a problem with you mentioned photography and a hair salon. But I will tell you that I did take a tour with Steve Freevert, and I don't know if he's there. I'll tell you, one of the best things we can do is open up access to some of the existing buildings that are not inhabitable. Several buildings along Fifth Street, as Steve and the whole board walked me through there, said, hey, Matt, this building right here, Fifth, and I forget, maybe it was Elm, Maple, I don't know what it was. Nobody's been in there. I said, why? Well, it's just full of mold. I said, this is at the corner of Fifth. Yeah, nope, it's full of mold. Nobody wants to be in there. So to me, if we're really interested in expanding commercial use down there, we ought to figure out ways to make sure that the buildings that are there that are just frankly falling apart are rehabilitated before we start taking down single family homes. Again, my opinion, but that's to me the low hanging fruit.
Well, and ironically, the council workshop that we were going to have tonight was on code compliance that was going to touch on that element. So in December, that will get addressed in further detail. I share your opinion. I mean, I think we've talked about this a lot, that, we've tried the carrot approach with the incentive programs that we've created down there. And it hasn't worked for some of these buildings now. And so we might need to take the next step, which is proactive enforcement.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just giving you my feedback on the presentation because I want to, obviously you're asking for it. I want to give it to you. So the next thing I'd talk to you about, we talked about missing middle, and Councilman Hudson has talked about this a lot. I think several others. We have more multifamily in West Des Moines than any other community in the metro. And we had a recent news article on this topic. So, I think can we do better for the missing middle? Sure. But I think we also need to be mindful of how we do that and whether we do it in the form of a apartment building or something else. Again, this is just food for thought. I am very sympathetic and agree with the mayor's comment about we need to make sure we're not just demolishing single family homes and putting up, in this case, I don't know, fourplex or whatever the right term is. And how we do that, whether there's a requirement that, hey, it cannot be, there's a finding by Dennis that, hey, it's not habitable. You can't get a certificate of occupancy. You can't get a rental license. I don't know what the standard is. There's got to be some sort of standard to say, hey, this is no longer habitable. Then 2 more items, parking. I think, we have a lot of city parking. That's great. I appreciate that Ryan bought these in the event that parking was going to be required at his other building. If we're going to have these units here, if they don't have sufficient parking on site, and that really wasn't addressed tonight, if they're going to park elsewhere, I think we ought to be coming up with a program in the city to say, hey, if you want to park in the city lot, that's fine, but there ought to be some sort of permit that's required for the resident to be there. And then the last item is, shall versus should. I think we ought to, I think we need to be clear. These design guidelines are, a lot of work was put into them. I'd like to see the word shall. I think it's important to signal to the development community and the residents there that they're going to be protected in a way that everything is going to comply with the design guidelines. It doesn't mean that the design guidelines cannot change. Somebody said like, well, if there's some new material, I'll tell you, if some new material comes along and it would satisfy the design guidelines, we ought to change the design guidelines. And maybe there's this gets a little dicey, but maybe you can get into a relief valve where, hey, if you want to deviate from the design guidelines, you have to have a supermajority of the council in order to deviate from them. So I think there's ways to do it, but I would prefer shall versus should. Those are the comments I have.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
I agree, man.
Put in shall. If we need to change based on a certain unique circumstance or something, bring it to a vote. Has to be a supermajority of the council to change it.
I agree.
One thing I did gloss over on that I intended to cover with the shall should argument was with the shall, I wouldn't just leave it up to staff interpretation. I think what we would propose is creating something to where there's an appeal that gets made. And it doesn't mean that staff has to recommend in favor, but there might be reasons for or against why they make a request like that. That could go to the Plan and Zoning Commission for recommendation and then in front of the council too. So it wasn't just staff administratively approving these deviations. There would be a formal process to do so.
But I like the shall and I like the 4/5 vote because shall, it like Councilman McKinney says, it gives people that known, quantity, that known thing, that this is the way that the design guidelines are, and this is the way that it's going to be. This is what we can expect. And in the case where there's a situation where, well, this doesn't work for me and we need to have a tweak to this, that's fine. Then you have some flexibility to have that tweak as well. Bring it to the council. And if it's a good enough tweak, if it's something that we can live with, then there's going to be 4 out of 5 people end up voting for it. And if we can't get the 4 votes, then, I mean, this area is important enough that I think you need the 4 out of 5 votes. I think
agree.
that gives people the certainty, but it also gives the flexibility to somebody that needs a little bit of deviation from what we've got here.
Can we bind future councils with a 4/5 vote,
Yeah.
Ryan?
I mean, we would have to probably put it in some kind of an ordinance or something for that.
Well, the PUD will be an ordinance when it does get adopted. So if that's the
Mhm.
will of the council and there's no legal reason to stop it. that can be-
But I need to know before we leave here tonight, because what my worry is yes, I've got the worry of I don't want to do something that incentivizes people to go in and start buying up single family residential homes in Valley Junction and tearing them down. But there are going to be situations like we have here where some of the homes are too far gone. It doesn't make sense economically for somebody to rehab them, and they're looking to put something back on the lot. And I think they need to know what they can and cannot do, what's allowed and what's not allowed in these different transition zones.
What we're forgetting is though that if the house is beyond, in their opinion, beyond repair, then don't buy it. There's somebody else out there that will. Whether it's to rehab it like the guy on Fifth Street with the real estate, or somebody that's going to rehab it to live in. If you don't want it, somebody else will buy it.
Well, what I'm saying, Kevin, is there's going to be a situation where somebody needs to know what they can and cannot do here. I mean,
I agree.
Let's say a tornado comes through here. Can only single family homes be rebuilt? That's what I'm trying to say. And that's a ridiculous scenario, but
Yeah, and I think
at least I hope it is. But what can be rebuilt on these, on 4th and 6th in these transition zones? That's what I think we need to know.
But if you're trying to prevent somebody from coming in and buying an entire block, then that's the only thing you can do is have a single family. Otherwise, there's nothing stopping somebody from coming in and buying Fifth Street from Vine to Locust, bulldozing everything and making those, I don't know, what do we got? 12 lots or more from Locust to Vine.
Well, there are
On
other
each side.
options besides single family, though.
Or
We could have
townhome.
2 houses per lot, as in a duplex, a townhome style. I mean, it doesn't have to be 12
And that's
or
what
4
that's what
per.
I'm getting at. What can go back?
So let me just share where I'm at on this. Ryan, I think this is a really nice project, by the way. I think it's looking really nice. And if the homes are just really, really 120 years old and they're really, really gone, I totally get this. I really do. Having said that, I would be very much in favor of just making this the one-off and then deciding what we want in the transitional zones, because Mr. Mayor, your concern, I think, is a valid one. Kevin's concern is a valid one too, but then let's change up this transitional zone. I actually find this transitional zone to be the most unique of the transitional zones, especially compared to the ones above to the north, because this one is right on the back of several of the developments that came a couple of years ago, which means I think this one could be a one-off, and maybe the other transitional zones do not have to be exactly like this one. So we do the now, which is potentially talk about this project and create a separate PUD for this one. And then we talk about the others and talk about some future oriented thinking, as Mr. Mayor, you kind of suggested. That's where I'm at, but if nobody else is there, that's fine too.
And I would just point out too, I mean, I'm not saying that Ryan would do this, but we have nothing right now that would stop someone from buying a home and demolishing it. They could come to the counter today and pull a permit. And so if we're focused on preservation, but we want to talk about what could be allowed in the future, I'm not so sure that this is the right way to go about mandating that. Maybe we need to look at a demolition overlay that would put more safeguards in place before properties do come down as an alternative and still allow the flexibility long term. And I think the question is, I mean, do you want these areas to remain single family, or do you want new investment, new living opportunities, the ability for commercial to apply that relief valve that we talked about that we don't see on Fifth? And I acknowledge that more could be done with the properties that haven't been renovated yet, but we haven't been able to force that issue to come to a head yet. So,
Brian, you bring up the fact of, preventing the demolition. That was talked about during the master plan by several of the residents down there, and it was just totally shoved underneath the rug and ignored. So that is a big desire of the residents down there, is to not only preserve the single family, but also the commercial properties and not bulldoze just because it doesn't fit what you want.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily prohibit it, but maybe it requires a council vote. Maybe it requires some study and due diligence before a demo permit just gets pulled at the counter. And I would be recommending in favor of something like that. And we can talk about how far out in the neighborhood that something like that goes, but that could be something that we propose to create as well.
And maybe that goes back to our 4/5 vote as well. You know, where it is a vote of the council and you do a 4/5 vote, if somebody wants to demo it, the council's got to support it by a supermajority. I don't know, a lot of things to think about, I guess, but you know, I do agree. I think this is a great project. I think it looks very nice. If there's nothing we can do with these 3 homes, and I'm not saying that there is or isn't, but it sounds like, Ryan, what you've brought up, Ryan Wiederstein, that economically it's not feasible to do anything different.
If it was more economically beneficial for me to keep those houses, renovate them and rent them, I would. I mean, we don't need any more projects. This just happens. And we kind of came to, you know, the city on this is, hey, this might be a nice roadmap to kind of figure out what aesthetically looks good. And when you have a house that's dilapidated, and yeah, there's people out there that are going to rebuild dilapidated houses. I'm not going to rebuild a dilapidated house like that. It just doesn't make any sense. But this might be a nice roadmap, and we're fine being partners on this deal and kind of going and seeing how it goes. If you guys want to try it on this PUD, that doesn't matter to me. We just brought it forward and we spent some time putting together a plan that we thought would look good and that fit in with what your guys' objectives have been for the last 3 or 4 years. We understand what happens down here with rentals and who's attracted to the area, what concerns they have. I mean, we have a number of properties down here and we understand what people want to see down here. So it's not like we just threw this at the wall and said, let's do it. We put a lot of thought into it. So, I mean, we even went back, we went back to Melee 3 times on this thing and said, this doesn't fit in with the neighborhood enough. It needs to look more like the neighborhood, and do it again. So we went around and around with them. They came back with modern stuff. We're like, Kevin Trevillion's not going to like that. Let's find something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what happens, Ryan, if you can't make this project work? What happens at that point in time if what you're stuck with is continuing to own the 3 single-family homes?
I mean, we'll just nurse them along, and I mean, they rent for like $1,000 a month. Well, I think one of them's $600 a month. I mean,
Okay.
Someone will buy them.
Yeah, I'll tear them down and hold it and see what happens before I probably sell them. I mean,
Single family homes,
I've kept them around, and I actually probably don't make money on the rent right now. So I'm keeping them around as rentals. So there's at least affordable housing. And I think that's kind of the idea why they keep letting the inspections occur, because the thought process there was it is still affordable for somebody, and not everything has to be perfect for every dwelling, for every tenant. So it clearly passes that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm an investor. I'm just looking for the best use of capital and the assets we have. And if we can make the area better from it, great. If not, you don't want it. There's no skin off my back.
All right, so let's have Ryan Moffett come back up. And I mean, Ryan, what can we expect as far as like when everything's going to be in place so that we can move forward on something? Whether they can move forward or not, I don't know, but
Well, I mean, I think if.
what do
if we
you
can-
need from us before we?
Yeah, if we can get direction whether to proceed with transitional zones as the subcommittee had originally intended, that would be one thing that would be helpful. You know, Brad talked about how we're 60% there. You know, we owe the consultant at this point some comments back. So I don't want to put firm timelines on it because our office is short-staffed right now, but you know, it's not insurmountable to tackle this once we have some of these bigger ticket issues out of the way and direction from you all on how you want to proceed.
Okay, so what do you need from us tonight before we adjourn then?
I guess, and I know there's a few council members we haven't heard from yet, but I guess, do we want these areas to stay residential predominantly, or do we want to embrace the transitional zone?
and we're talking embracing the transitional zone means having more than just single family homes, but also might mean having single family homes that are converted to businesses as well.
Correct.
Businesses that are more like what you're talking about, kind of lighter.
Safeguards on the businesses. So again, the really intensive bars, restaurants, those couldn't happen. Auto dominant uses couldn't happen there. It's a pretty short list of what could happen. And I think
I'm in favor of these zones. I'm personally in favor of the zones. And I'd like to see them move forward. And I think that we can do something that's reasonable in each one of these zones that makes sense. I'd like to see them move forward personally.
I like the zones too. Again, I do think that for this particular project, this particular transitional zone can be different than what I'm suggesting right now. I would like to see in all the other transitional zones, not 4. I would like to see 2 or 1. If it's going to be in a single family zone right now, this one that we just talked about, not talking about that one right now, but all the other transitional zones, I would like to see 2, up to 2. So 1 or 2. So a single family or a duplex, but not a 4-plex per transition. That's what I would prefer, because that would encourage the missing middle, which its core component of the missing middle. People argue about this, but the core component of the missing middle is owner occupied housing. And I know there's another missing middle piece that says, well, that can include rentals too. That's not my camp that I'm in. My missing middle is really for wealth generation over the course of, well, generations, as it were.
And I would point out 2 of those transitional zones are on Fifth Street too, which, you know, this block that's up right now, obviously very much in transition. So give some thought to what you'd want to see there too. I mean, we, you know.
Oh, not exclusively 1 or 2. I'm just saying in terms of housing, not 4.
But
2
Ryan-
or 1 for housing.
Ryan, I just want to point out, anything on Fifth Street is zoned commercial. Even from Locust to Vine, both sides, even though most of them are single family houses, it's zoned commercial.
That is
These
correct.
transition zones that you're presenting are in residential. That's the difference.
Well, and that's actually a good point, because I think, quite honestly, what we're proposing could actually restrict on Fifth Street, south of Vine, more so than what's today. They are zoned commercial today. Someone could tear those down and put up a true commercial building under today's code. So this actually could probably put some guardrails on what is allowed today on Fifth Street.
To wait.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
I am in support of the transitional zones. I also really like the project. I think it's attractive. I do agree that the design guidelines have to be really adhered to. If there are any major modifications, we need to have this come, and we all need to be able to address that. I mean, I sat through a year and a half of meetings with Brad on design guidelines. And it was probably the most brutal exercise I've done since I've been on city council for 8 years. And so we made a commitment to these individuals in this community about trying to both be innovative, but yet restore a bit of the look and the feel of the community. So I'm in favor of transitional zones. I even like this project because it sounds like these houses are not something that somebody's going to invest in and put a whole lot of money into and whatnot. Maybe I'm making an assumption, but it's a lot of money to put into a house to redo a foundation and all this stuff. So, but I want us to be particular about what that looks like and the feel of it, making sure that guidelines are met.
And I think I didn't live that experience, so I can come in and talk about shall versus should, but you all did. So
Yeah, it was
hearing that loud and clear.
it was brutal.
Yeah.
I'll just say I kind of falling in the same place as Renee and Greg. But I also am very empathetic to what Kevin's trying to protect. I like the transition zone idea. It sounds to me tonight like these places need to go. So if we're going to do a PUD or whatever we got to do there to get that, I would be in favor of that. If I understand it correctly.
And although you know where I stand, I'm still going to say it. I could sit here and tell you that the house that Cindy and I and Jack live in is
Mhm.
totally beyond repair and we have to tear this down. And are you going to believe me because I tell you that? Bullshit. Okay. So where I'm at on is that I don't agree with tearing down single family houses in Valley Junction. Okay. I don't agree with the transitional zones because there was a strong majority of people that were not on that master plan committee that voiced their concerns against these and were just totally dismissing them. The committee dismissed them and now we're going to dismiss them. So no, I don't like any part of this. And I call bullshit on the fact that these houses are totally beyond repair and they have to come down. Somebody will buy them.
So Kevin, we were all in the committee together and
Mhm.
so the committee voted down this concept? I don't remember.
No, the committee supported the transitional zones.
Okay.
There were a lot of residents that spoke against them. But the people that were on that committee
Okay.
dismissed their concerns
Oh,
and went with the transitional.
okay. So transitional was voted on and you're saying by the
Mhm.
committee that
Yeah,
was
that's what
assembled.
that's where
Yeah,
these
that's-
came from.
Yeah,
Yeah, and again, the original
I misunderstood what you first said.
The original version of this had more transition zone down almost all of Fourth and Sixth,
And it
and
was
this
cut
was the
down.
compromise solution.
This
Yeah,
is what
maybe
people
I'm
live with.
Yeah, it was
You-
cut down. It was cut down.
If the properties get torn down, the project goes ahead, it still has to meet the design guidelines, correct?
Correct.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
I think
To some degree, but at this point, we don't have any, what I'm hearing is we don't have any teeth to make anybody follow the design guidelines because we don't even know if it's going to say shall or should,
Well,
or can or can't.
if
Or I wish you would do this because this is what we wanted.
that gets solved when this PUD gets approved. And at that point, the guidelines are codified and we hear the will of the council is, shall language in there. So it's not optional then. It has to be done.
shall with the 4/5 majority if there needs to be an amendment to something that's a shall.
Yeah, I think that's a decent approach. I mean, it treated a little bit more as a living document because again, as much work that went into it, we are not going to predict every scenario that's going to come up out there.
Yeah, I guess, to Renee's point, I mean, we had this large committee that met and you were there for just about every single meeting. I was there in a number of those meetings as well. And I mean, it was hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And we agree with the design guidelines. Committee's good. Design guideline, committee good. But transition zone, committee bad. That doesn't make any sense to me. But
What committee, what?
committee voted for the design guidelines. We like that.
Yeah.
We like that. Committee voted for the transition zones. We don't like that. Committee sucks when it comes to transition zones, but they're good when it comes to design guidelines.
The
They
resident,
listened when it came to design guidelines, but they didn't listen when it came to, so
You're
I'm
right.
going to parse it. I like the committee for this. I don't like the committee for that.
because you're right, Russ, the committee listened to what the residents were saying that was not part of the committee, but were able to talk, that they wanted the design guidelines because they wanted new buildings to look as close to historical as you could possibly get. So you didn't get the rusty tower next to St. Kilda's. Okay, now, but they did not agree with the transition zones. The committee went along with them anyhow.
Okay.
I don't believe so. I don't know if Councilmember McKinney, if he wanted to put any other thought in his direction.
Councilman
on that.
McKinney, you got any last thoughts? We're about to adjourn this workshop. I think staff's got the direction of where we sit up here. And if there's anything else that you may have, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we're probably going to get some last comments and adjourn.
I appreciate it. I think I shared all I remain where I was earlier.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks. Anybody else? Any last comments? Okay, so I guess we will let staff go forth and conquer I would assume that we're going to need to probably have another council meeting workshop or something when we're ready to bring the final product here and discuss
I
it.
think that'd be a good idea because that PUD is going to be very detailed beyond transitional zone in terms of setbacks, again, all the things that we look for from a zoning
Sure.
perspective. So
Sure. Okay, sounds good. Well, with that, we will adjourn the workshop.
Thank you.